Let me see. Okay, and then should we go? I think you. Thank you. What do you do anywhere? Okay. No, I mean, you're welcome to sit and listen, or you can log in on your computer and listen, or
Yeah.
you can just get hooked on it. Yeah.
Okay, sharing and you are.
And it's recording?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Hello, hello. Okay, so I am gonna start by walking you through, for those of you that have used the system before, like Dave, this beginning part, Dave, is just gonna be a little review.
That's
These
okay.
girls are new, so we're gonna walk through from the very beginning. So here's how you're gonna start. So a couple things, remember that when you go to show a home, you need to have somebody under contract. Okay. Now we have two separate buyer contracts here. We've got one that is always going to be the one that you want to have done, and that is the actual exclusive right to represent. And then we have our one-time showing contract. The one-time showing contract is going to be used if they are hesitant in signing a contract with you, okay? So the first thing that you're going to do is now, I personally set up a buyer consult with my people. Now, sometimes you don't have time for that, right? Sometimes they want to go look at a house. They don't have time to set up a time with you to like go over a buyer consult first. But I would always advise that you do a buyer consult if you're able. Now, what that looks like, for me, and we're going to go into detail for those of you that are taking boot camp, we'll go into buyer consults a little bit more detail. For me, everybody does them different. So that's one thing that you'll learn is that I do different than Dave does. Dave does different than Paul does. Paul does different than Andy does. Okay. Paul does, we do different than Melissa. So everybody it's your own business. And so it's really up to you how you kind of set your appointments up. For me, I like a super chill vibe for my buyer consults. So I'm a coffee shop person. I like to meet them at a coffee shop or over appetizers or something like that, because I just want to get to know them. Now, if they're past clients, that's a different story, right? I may just send them the contracts and then go over them with them. But for the most part, when I'm meeting with a new buyer, I'm going to want to like set up a meeting, get to know them. What are they looking for? Educate them on the process and things like that. Now, the new rule, of course, is that you have to have a contract before you can open the door. You all are signing that when you're saying that you have that when you request a showing on showing time. You're clicking the button saying, yep, I have a contract. Okay, so you do need a contract every time you're going to show a house. So here is what that looks like. So I am in North Star. Okay, again, for those of you that are veteran agents, bear with me. We got some newbies going on here that we're going to walk through the whole thing from the very beginning. I'm in North Star. You're going to go to Tools and then Transaction Desk. Now, remember, Transaction Desk is where you write the transactions. Bless you. Sign is where you sign the transactions. Very different. Okay. They talk to each other, but they are not the same. So you're not going to really edit if you don't have to. You're not going to really edit your forms in Sign. Okay. In Sign, you're going to want to limit that as much as possible to signing. Okay. In Transaction Desk is where you're going to create and write your forms. So if you have your laptops and you want to follow along, let me know and I will slow down if I need to. If you haven't set up your agent dashboard yet, or those of you that are veteran agents, if you want to zhuzh up your dashboard, if it doesn't look like mine, or if you want it to look different, you are going to click this lock button right here. Okay. And that opens up all the other boxes that you can have down here. Okay. So I personally like mine a little bit cleaner and a little bit simpler. So I have create a transaction, start assigning. I have create a template because I'm in charge of creating the templates here. And then I've got my transactions and my signs. Okay, my signings. So when I first start, I am gonna click on either the house or I'm gonna click create transaction, okay? Remember, we're just at the very beginning, so we're gonna create our transaction, then we're gonna either print or send to the signings. So we're gonna start here with create transaction. Holy buckets, of course, it's gotta be new.
Yeah, I had questions about this on what the heck
Yeah, is
old
it like
legacy transactions are and this new, what do
There's
they
a
call
whole
it?
new version
Wolf?
that they have coming
Wolf
out now
account.
for transaction desk.
Yeah,
Okay, well, for sake of me not knowing that yet, we're gonna create in legacy transactions, okay? And I will learn about that and probably teach on that on Synergy. So now we're on the buy side, okay? Listings we're gonna do next week. So we're on the buy side. I personally, again, it's your business, you do you. I like to write the buyer side, I put under their name, okay? So let's say I was representing the buyer and we're gonna make it Dawn and Tammy Smith, okay? Now, a reminder, we have tried to make this very easy for you. So we have these templates created for you. You do not need to go in and grab all the individual forms, okay? So use the template. You're gonna look for ROGC buyer rep docs, okay? You can see we've got purchase agreements in here, commercial agreements, the listing template, but for right now, we're gonna focus on the buyer rep docs. Now, all great. I do have use wizard here. There's not a lot you can do in the wizard with buyer docs. You're not going to import any data. That's going to be for more of your listing or your purchase agreement. And then you are the buyer's agent. Okay, so that's where you're going to sit with that. Then you're going to click create.
what would you add to import data?
I didn't. That's what I said. You
don't
can't.
need
Yep.
anything.
Yep. Now, on this first page here, for the details, there's not going to be a lot that you're going to put in here because these are the buyer contracts. There's not a lot of information that we can put here. So I'm going to click next. Same thing with transaction dates. I'm going to click next. There's nothing to do there. Now with contacts, you can add your contacts here. If they're already in your system, you're going to click add existing contact. If they're not, because this is a new contract, you're going to create a new transaction contact. They are a buyer, okay? And we've got Dawn Smith. And if you have it, I would put their email in here because that's going to make it way easier for you down the road, okay? So I am going to put in, I'll just use my email. Okay, now you don't have to fill, I don't fill in anything else. This is all I do. Go away. All right, add to address book so that they're there every time you use the system. And then you're going to click save. Okay, now I'm going to add Tammy. So I've got create new, buyer, add their email, save the address book, and save. It should automatically add you and us as your broker. Okay, any questions on adding contacts? We're good? Okay, then we're going to click next. Now, here are the forms. So here we have the forms. You can see we've got agency, the buyer contract. This is the one-time ROG buyer showing contract, and we have the broker disclosure. So when you're talking about buyer, now we're not on the purchase agreement yet. We're just talking about buyer forms. Okay, these are the ones that are required. Now, you're not going to need the exclusive and the one-time. If you do the exclusive, you don't need the one-time. If you do the one-time, you will at some point need the exclusive. Okay, so one more time. If you do the exclusive, you don't need the one-time. If you use the one-time, you will eventually need the exclusive. Okay?
All get agency relationships, no matter what.
Everybody gets agency and everybody gets the broker disclosure.
Everyone is a multiple.
All right, so let's begin. Okay, I'm sorry, let's do here. This is where I'm going to edit these forms. Okay, So with agency, there's nothing to edit, but there is for the buyer contract, okay? There is for the showing contract and there is for the disclosure. Okay, now I'm gonna go and grab one that's already filled in for you guys. So that it's a little easier to read. Okay, so you can see here's where we just were: agency, buyer rep, one-time showing contract, broker disclosure. So here we are with agency. All right, so agency relationships is required at, who knows, from school. When do you have to give agency?
Anytime you're talking to somebody.
Okay, what's the words? Who can remember? It's the hard word.
Under contract.
Nope. Nope. So agency must be given at first. Yes, see, nobody can pronounce it. Whenever you're going to have a conversation with somebody about real estate, when you're talking about important things like terms, price, motivation, things like that, you're going to want to give agency. Okay, so Minnesota law requires, okay, early in any relationship, okay, that we talk about the relationships that we can have with the consumer. This is not a contract. This is a disclosure only. And if you desire representation, you must enter into a written contract. So anytime in our forms that you're going to see bold or all caps, those are really important things. Okay. So again, not a contract. Minnesota law requires agency disclosure only. Okay. And if you desire representation, you must enter into a written contract. Okay. Before you enter into a written contract, you are a customer. Okay. Once you enter into a contract, you are a client. So when you are a customer, okay, you do not have any relationship with that person. Okay. So we were talking about this in the realm of open houses this weekend. If you're sitting in an open house, who is your fiduciary responsibility to if you do not have a contract with the buyer? The listing. No. Who is your fiduciary responsibility to when you're sitting in an open house? Either
seller.
your own or somebody else's from our brokerage.
The seller.
The seller. Yep. So your fiduciary responsibilities of confidentiality, of all that kind of stuff, lie with the seller. Okay. So again, not disclosure only, not a contract. Okay. Now there's 4 different relationships that you can have with the consumer. Okay. Number 1, lines 14 through 23 are if you're working for the seller. So when we talk about listings next week, that's what we'll go over, is what are your responsibilities to the seller. We're on the buy side. So one of the ways that we can have a relationship with the buyer is as the buyer's agent. Okay. So as the buyer's agent, what do you think your responsibilities are to the buyer? If you're under contract with the buyer, what do you think could be some responsibilities with the buyer?
Old car, all of it. If you're
Old
under
car.
contract,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So who do you keep in mind?
The
Okay.
buyer.
The buyer. Yep. So the broker, okay, you're entering into an agreement with the buyer to protect the buyer. Okay. The buyer's agent owes the buyer the fiduciary responsibilities listed on page 2, which is old car. Okay. You also must disclose to the buyer any material facts that you know of the home. So if you know the basement's flooded, you have to tell the buyer. Okay. Anything that could adversely and significantly affect the buyer's use or enjoyment. You'll hear that a lot. Okay. Anything that could adversely and significantly affect the buyer's use and enjoyment of the property, you need to tell. Okay. If you're as an agent is working with the seller as a customer and the buyer, okay, so seller is a customer, buyer is the actual client. Remember, your fiduciary responsibilities lie heavily with them. Okay, you must keep the best interest of the buyer in mind. Okay, and everything they tell you is confidential. Okay, now that switches when we have dual agency. So dual agency in Minnesota is what? There's two ways that you can be a dual agent in Minnesota. What's one?
That you are representing the buyer and the seller.
Yep. So when you individually are representing the buyer and the seller, that is dual agency. What's another way? Your brokerages. So if I have the listing, okay, and Maria has the buyer, that is dual agency. Okay. So what happens when the relationship is such that it is dual agency? What happens with your fiduciary responsibilities?
They kind of need to be.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
So the important words there, okay, are that you cannot do anything to the detriment of either party. Okay. So this is where things get a little muddy. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of dual agency. I really wish that our state would go to where if it was brokerage, that would not be considered dual agency so that each side could have their own representation, but it's not. So that's the hard part, because in our world today, okay, could telling a buyer to get a home inspection be construed as a negative to the seller? Right? So where is that line, right? Where is that gray area of somebody in our world today, right, could say, well, that's to that detriment of me, is she told him to get a home inspection. You're not, right? You're really trying to protect all parties. I firmly believe home inspections are for the protection of everybody. But could someone view that as a negative, right? And that's where things get a little muddy. So the problem is that when we have dual agency, okay, it can seem like then nobody is getting fair representation.
or care.
Right? Because you're trying to represent them, but your hands are a little tied, right? So here's the deal. It does limit the level of representation that a salesperson can provide, okay? It prohibits them from acting, you'll see line 39 and 40, it prohibits them from acting exclusively for either party, okay? However, confidential information about price, terms, and motivation is always kept confidential. So even in a dual agency situation, unless you have permission, you cannot go if you're technically on the buy side, right? Like in my example, Maria's have the buyer and I have the seller. She cannot come to me and say, I know my buyer could pay more. Okay, that is still confidential information about price, terms, and motivation. Okay, again, dual agents, line 42, cannot advocate for one party to the detriment of the other. Okay, here's the thing with dual agency is we want to make sure that all the parties understand what is dual agency and how it affects the transaction, but we also don't want to make it sound scary, right? Because if they don't agree to dual agency, what can you then not do?
You lose a sale.
Not necessarily, because they could shop everywhere else. They could buy a Remax listed property. They could buy a Keller Williams listed property, but what can they not purchase?
An ROG.
An ROGC property. Okay. So if they don't agree to dual agency, then you cannot show them anything or execute a purchase agreement on anything that is listed by our brokerage. So it decreases the amount of listings that they have available to view. Okay. And so that is where we want to tell them in such a way, right, that dual agency, if they were to find a property that was listed by Realty One Group Choice, somewhat limits what we can do to help them, right? But that if they don't agree with that dual agency, then they can't see a ROGC property. Okay. The best way to go about dual agency is to kind of keep the playing field level, right? Is to kind of explain options, but not advocate, right? So it is your option to get a home inspection, but it's also your option not to get a home inspection. Okay, so to kind of come in with neutrality is what you want to do with dual agency. All right, next is facilitator. Now, I don't generally advise that we do facilitator, and the reason is that you can't really do anything. You can't give advice, okay? You don't owe them the fiduciary responsibilities, except for confidentiality, okay? And so where you might use facilitation is, let's say the son or daughter is buying mom and dad's house, okay? Or a renter is buying a landlord's house, okay? And what that means is they really have to have all the items figured out, right? So when you say to them, okay, what do you want to do for earnest money? And they say, well, what's earnest money? You have to say, I guess you'll have to Google that, right? Because you really can't give them any advice, okay? And so with facilitator, with the way that we can finagle our commissions now, I would always advocate that you put them under contract, because that protects everybody, including yourself. Okay, so facilitator is you owe the duty of confidentiality to the party, but knows no other duty to anybody else. So again, you don't really owe anybody any sort of fiduciary responsibilities when it comes to helping them write or work through the contracts when you're on facilitator. So we've been talking about all these fiduciary responsibilities. I kind of group, when I explain to people, I group them in twos. So I think that loyal and obedience go together, right? So when I'm explaining it to people, I say, my job is to be loyal and obedient. And then I always make a joke and laugh, because it's like, could they put those in a different order? Because it sounds like you're a dog, right? But that is acting in their best interests and carrying out all their lawful instructions. Okay, the next two, 66 and 68, disclosure and confidentiality. Again, those go together, I think. So number one, I have to tell you any material facts that I have the knowledge of, but everything that you tell me is confidential. Okay, so I have to tell you everything, but I can't tell anybody else anything. And then reasonable care in accounting is taking care of you, right? So performing duty as an agent and then taking care of their money, which is the accounting piece. Okay, so when I start this way. Hey, just so you know, this is required by law, right? That's what it says right here. Minnesota law requires. This is a disclosure form only. This is not a contract. Okay. If you want to enter into a contract for representation, we're going to do that later, or in this case, maybe we're going to do it next, right? Whatever the case might be. Okay. But again, it's only for disclosure. It's not a contract. What this form does is it goes over my relationships with you, what I can do for you, how I can be of service for you. Number one, I could be the seller's agent, which I'm not. I'm going to be working for you as a buyer's agent. Okay. The other thing is that I can be a buyer's agent, and that means I'm working for you. Okay. I have to keep your best interests at heart. I have to disclose any material facts to you that I know of. Okay. And I have to really work for you. That's what I'm doing. Is I'm just the buyer's agent. Now, should we stumble upon a property that is listed by someone at my brokerage or myself, that creates a dual agency situation. And what that means is that we have to kind of level the playing field, and I'm going to go ahead and represent both parties, okay, equally. Now, if you have the right to not agree to dual agency, which we're going to talk about in the contract, but if you do not, then I can't show you any property listed by Realty UNbrokerage. The last one is facilitator. We're not going to do that. That's kind of only if maybe you brought me to the listing and you knew the seller and you guys had figured out a deal kind of on the side. Okay, the facilitation doesn't let me help you. And then I owe you these responsibilities. So to be loyal and obedient, again, that's to act in your best interest and to carry out all your lawful instructions. Okay. Disclosure and confidentiality. What that means is that I'm going to go ahead and disclose anything that I know about the property, but anything that you tell me is kept confidential. and then reasonable care and accounting. Okay, and that just means that I'm gonna take care of you and I'm gonna take care of your money. Now, what you'll see down here is the notice regarding predatory offenders. We can't give you any advice on that, but you can see here, and I'll give you copies of this form once you sign it, is that you have a number for the Minnesota Department of Corrections, or you can go to the Department of Corrections website and take a look for yourself. Any questions? Great, let's sign. Any questions on agency? Any questions from the peanut gallery online? All right, let's move on. So here we are with the buyer contract. So again, you have to have one of these signed prior to showing the property, okay? Those of you that want, I don't know yet, but these will be a template like this on OneHub if they're not already, for you to kind of look at how to fill them out. Okay, so you're gonna put the date up here. Then we have the buyer's name, okay? If you have two buyers, they both go on the same line. Oh, do you want copies of this? Like blank so you can fill it out and write notes on the papers?
Yeah.
Hey, Deja, can you print a couple copies of a blank buyer contract?
And the agency relationship.
Oh, maybe come back in. Sorry, we talked about that, giving you guys a copy so that you can have some to write on. Okay, so the broker is us. Okay, so Realty One Group Choice. Okay, now this is important. Okay, your contract start dates. Okay, so your start date's gonna go in here. You can put the little calendar and put the date in. And it ends at 11:59 on this date. Now, I get asked all the time, what do you put in here? Quite honestly, it's up to you. So you can put 30 days, you can put a day, you can put a year, can't go more than a year. Okay? You get to put in here whatever you want. If you've got someone that's hesitant and maybe you want to do a 10-day contract or a 7-day contract, again, that's 100% up to you. You can always do a new one or extend the one that you have as long as it's pre-cancel or pre-expiration. Okay. Now, when you get busy, I would have you develop a system as to how you're going to date your contracts. Okay. Because when you just do a straight 90 days, right? Are you going to remember that this buyer contract ends October 18th and this buyer contract ends November 1st and this buyer contract ends December 22nd? It gets confusing and then they expire. And even if you're within a deal, you still have to have a valid buyer contract. Okay. So the way that we tend to do it is like a rental agreement. Okay. I used to do the end of the quarter, but now I'm kind of falling back into the month. But if I were going to write one today, today's what, the 21st, I would write it for say 90 days, right? So say January, but I wouldn't write January 21st. I would write January 31st. Okay. So I know that all of my contracts end at the end of the month. So I only have to go in and review contracts at the end of the month because I know they end at the end of the month. They don't end on a weird day. Okay. I used to do at the end of the next quarter. So for example, we're in the 4th quarter. So I would do my contract to end March 31st. But that's the end of the 1st quarter. Okay. Sometimes you're going to get people that are like, ooh, that's a long time. You can do whatever you want, right? Whatever makes everybody feel comfy and cozy is what you're going to do. I would say you for sure want it for 90 if you can. Like if you're going to go into it with something, I would do it for 90. Some do it for 6 months. Okay.
Jackie,
Yes.
just to share also how I look at it.
Yes.
Getting to know your buyers, what they're looking for, where they're looking to buy.
How easy it's going to be to find them something.
Because if they're tire pickers, don't do a 90-day contract.
Yeah.
You probably just need to start at least 6 months.
Agreed.
You know, most people don't, ever question you on that.
Yep.
It's just, but, you know, if you know that, hey, you're just in the startup phase, we may be looking for 3 months before it
Yes.
comes to the market. They'll understand.
Yeah.
So really understanding what they're looking to do and how they're looking to do it.
And just telling them, like, if I'm not serving you well, we can end this contract at any.
Yes.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
And that's what I always tell them. You know, if I'm not doing my job, please tell me.
Yeah.
But give me a chance to improve what I'm doing.
Yes.
To meet your needs. And then after that, if I'm still not meeting your needs or we're
Yes.
not meshing,
Mhm.
let's just
For
mutually
sure.
say, we're good to go. Let's just cancel.
I would agree, and I'm not a huge fan of the contracts. And I think it's just partly where I'm at in my career, right? And so I do give them the option. I'm like you, hey, you know what, if it's not working out, we'll have a conversation. We'll see if I can make it better, but if you ultimately want to get out of this contract, then I'm gonna let you out of the contract, right?
It's better for you to leave amicably the relationship.
Yes.
versus Bitter, because if they're bitter, they're gonna tell a bunch of people.
Correct.
"Hey, this guy was a jerk,
Yeah,
don't ever use him.
Yes.
So you're better off just kind of
correct.
caving into it.
Yep, for sure, agreed. And remember, it has to take you through closing. So remember that you're 30 to 45 days between executed purchase agreement and closing is 30 to 45, sometimes even 60 days. So that's another great rationale to say, I'm gonna make it for 6 months, right? I 100% agree, Dave, with the see what their situation is, because if they are just starting or if they're building new construction, that takes a whole year, right, to build new construction. So make sure that you're pushing it out a bit. So.
Hey, Jackie, can you give a quick synopsis of what you just discussed? Because I only heard bits and pieces of it.
Yes, as far as like the forms or just what Dave and I were talking about.
Just what you two were talking about.
Yeah, so Dave had said when you do that buyer consult, that's another great time to kind of figure out what their situation is. And so if they're, like he said, tire kickers, you're going to want to make your buyer contract a little bit longer. And if they're, you know, if they're maybe just starting their journey and they might be looking for a needle in a haystack, that would be another reason to make it a little bit longer. You know, you can always cancel it. And so I think his point is to really know your buyers and to know their situation and then adjust your contract dates accordingly.
Good, thank you. That was
Absolutely.
important.
There's another copy here if anybody, did you do the whole PA? Oh, I'm sorry, we're not on the PA. I'm sorry. Brain, you're good, you're good. Okay, so we've got buyer's name, Realty One Group choice. We have the contract dates, and again, this is them giving you the exclusive right, line number 5, the exclusive right to locate and or assist in negotiations for the purchase. Okay. All right. The contract terminates upon successful closing or expiration or cancellation of the contract, whichever occurs first. And it says right here, the contract may only be canceled by written mutual agreement of the parties, which again, to Dave's point, don't be that person. Let them out. Let them out. It's not worth your energy. It's not worth the soul sucking. Just let them go. Okay. Now, the next 2 sections talk about everybody's obligations, right? So what are we doing? So your obligation is to make a reasonable effort to locate the property acceptable to them, okay? Use your professional knowledge and skills to assist in negotiations. Assist them throughout the transaction. Act in their best interest at all times. Of course, according to the law, okay? And then you do need to comply with any fair housing and non-discrimination regulations. Now, here's the deal. We heavily advise you to go over these documents with them, okay? We know that there are agents out there that just send them over for review. Now, again, know your client, right? If I know my client, and maybe this is the 2nd or 3rd time I've been shopping with them, they trust me, we're good. But here is why we are in the situation that we are in with all the lawsuits, is because an agent sent the client a contract, didn't go over it with them, said the proverbial, if you have any questions, let me know. They signed it, later on found out the details that were in the contract and said, oh, I didn't even know what I was signing. I'm going to sue them. Okay. So we want to be better here, right? We want to be the best agents in the state. The way that you can do that and the way that you can be of service is by going over these contracts with them. Now, does that mean I'm going to read them all these lines? Absolutely not. If you're new, and maybe not even if you're new, everybody, what I would do is I would sit down with these documents and I would create your own little elevator speech for each of these sections. For example, when I go over this with a client, I say, here's you, here's me. Okay, here's you, here's me. Okay, we're starting our contract now. I've got it dated for January 31st. Okay, if we can always cancel it if you're not happy. Okay, and here's what I'm going to do for you. Okay, I'm going to help you find a property. Okay, I'm going to use my professional skills and knowledge to help you get that property. Okay, I'm going to take you from start to finish, and actually, you don't even get rid of me at the end. I stay with you forever. Okay, and I'm working for you. So I'm going to keep your best interest at all times, as long as I don't break any rules. Okay, so I'm not reading this paragraph. Now that one, it kind of felt like it did because I was a little wordy, but I just point out the high points. Okay, I'm still a paper and wet sign person. So in most cases, I'm sitting across the table from them and reading it upside down, right? And using my little pen to point out things. Okay, here's, I'm gonna locate a property for you. Okay, that's this one here. I'm gonna locate a property for you. I'm gonna use my professional skills and knowledge to help you get the property. Okay, I'm gonna help you from start to finish. I'm gonna act in your best interest at all times, as long as I'm not breaking any rules. Okay, so I would really advise you to sit down with pen and paper and make your little, what are you going to say? And then that's what you're going to practice. Okay, so that this becomes easier to go over. Because you don't want to stumble, because then it makes you nervous. Okay, now, what are the buyer's responsibilities? Okay, I don't use obligation because I feel like obligation sounds very strict. Okay, so I say, what are your responsibilities? How are we going to work together? Okay, I'm always going to come at it from a team perspective. So in each of these, I'm going to say, how are we going to work together? Well, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, and here's what I expect of you. You and I, we're going to just work with each other. Okay, you're going to give me any personal and financial information I need. And quite honestly, this is where I ease their mind. I say, I don't need to know anything more than that you're pre-approved and how much money you're bringing as your down payment, and if you need closing costs. Because people freak. That's why I have lost business. Is people, I will say, why didn't you call me? I didn't want you to know my finances. People are very embarrassed, or they're very prideful of their income and of their debt and of their credit score. Okay. And so a lot of times they don't want to give you that information. So I ease their mind right away. Because can you imagine the lights that are going off, right? Oh my God, I have to give her, they're going to get stuck on line 16 and they're going to not listen to any word that you have to say. So I say, okay, we're going to work exclusively together. Okay. You're just going to give me any financial information I need. And quite honestly, all I need to know is that you're pre-approved. Okay. And then what you're using for a down payment if we need your closing costs. Okay. Now, once we write the purchase agreement, which I'm going to help you with, okay, you are obligated to buy the property. Of course, there's ways out, which we're going to talk about in the purchase agreement. Okay. But my broker, I always blame the broker, even though I am the broker. Okay. Is my broker, if you choose not to purchase, my broker may come after you. And I always say nay, because are we really gonna? Probably not. Because again, we don't want the reviews out there, right? We'll back you, right? But a lot of times our advice is let it go, right? Okay, so here it is, the compensation part, okay? Wholeheartedly, the lawsuit and settlement stems around compensation. Okay, when I first got in the industry, I was taught what do you think we were taught to say when it came to compensation back then in the olden days? Okay, how many of you have bought and sold and heard this?
They say the typical rate is this.
Back then, you would have heard, I'm free. The seller pays my commission. You don't pay me anything. That is wholeheartedly while we are in the settlement and lawsuit situation that we are in. Now, many of you would say, and I hear it all the time, now that the buyer contract has changed. The buyer contract has not changed. This has been written this way for many, many years. It was never explained correctly, and that's why we're in the pickle that we're in. It has always been the buyer's responsibility to pay the commission. It was just never explained that way. And yes, most of the time, the sellers paid the commission, but it was explained that, oh, the seller pays my commission. I'm guilty of it. That's how I was taught. Okay, that is not what this says. So let's talk about compensation. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on this. Lines 21 through 23. Okay, the biggest thing here that I will point out, and I will tell you to point out to them, again, bold and all caps, that is the commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Okay, now what does that mean? So here's how we fill this out. We as a brokerage do not do retainer fees. We don't manage retainer fees, and any money that you earn as commission has to come through the brokerage by state law. So in line 27, you're going to put zeros. Okay, because we are not collecting a retainer fee. And yes, that means you're going to work for free for a very long time, and you may or may not get paid.
Is there any case that you would?
No.
With that? Never. Even if you're investing a lot in staging and marketing.
Well, this is buy side.
Oh.
Yep. Nope. I once showed 500 houses to a client and never knew if I was going to get paid.
Yeah.
We've heard of a relocation or something like that. You could always come to me with that, but no, we do not. Number one, we don't want to manage retainer fees. We think they can get very messy. And so our answer right now is 0. Okay, now in line 30. In line 30 goes what your fee is as a percent. Okay, now again, it's your business. Okay, you can choose what you want to charge your people. The rule on the buy side is, however, is that you cannot collect more than what is written in line 30. And so there's multiple thought processes around this number. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Okay, so we've got some agents in here, okay, that would happily take 2%. But they'd love 3%. Okay, you would put 3% in here. And if, say, you negotiated with the seller a 2% commission, you can always charge less. You can always collect less, but you cannot collect more than what you have in this line. Okay. Now, some people say, well, oh gosh, if I put 3% in there, somebody's going to be like, oh my gosh. Here's the deal. There is space in this contract at the very end here for you to write things. Okay. So as much as we don't want you to write your own clauses, I have written many different ones, right? So I have written 3%, right? But then at the end, I say, as long as the seller pays out 2%, that shall satisfy the buyer's obligation, right? Because for me, I'm fine with whatever I get paid. So kind of whatever makes them feel comforted, right? Now, I have most people, I write 3% in there and they don't even flinch an eye. They're like, okay, right? I have a couple that are like, Well, isn't it 2.7? Because, right, that was like the quote unquote, the norm, right?
Hey,
And if
Jack,
that's the case, I put 2.7, okay? But
Jack,
I,
oh, sorry.
that's okay, hang on one second. I typically write 3% in there, okay? And if they balk at it, we discuss that. Do they want a different number? Okay, fine. Or can we put a clause at the end, right? That says, you know, no, whatever. I gotta think of the word verbiage, but a lot of it pertains to, as long as I get this from the seller, then your obligation is done. Okay. Because if that's not the case for you, which again, I don't say this in a judgy way, if you put 3% and you go find a property and the seller's only paying out 2%, then it's your right to either charge or not charge your buyer that 1%. Okay, so here's an example, and then Andy, I'll get to your question. Let's say you write 3%. Again, this is just for example purposes. Let's say you write 3% in line 30 and you go and do a new construction and you are only going to get 1.8%. Okay, it is up to you whether or not you want to charge your buyer that 1.2 or anything in between, right? So you could say, okay, buyers, here's the deal. I'm only going to get paid 1.8. Okay. I know I put 3 in my contract, but how about if I go down to 2.5? So you owe me the additional 0.7%. Okay. That's up to you what you want that final number on the Alta to look like when you're sitting at the closing table. Okay. So am I going to make enough if I collect 1.8? Do I want to charge them extra money? Okay. And it might depend on the client, right? If you've got a higher end buyer where your commission might be higher, then maybe you're okay with 1.8. If you've got a $200,000 payment in the rear, maybe you say, nope, I'm going to keep my 3, right? But you cannot collect more than what's in here. In line 31, I couldn't put it in the template, but you could either write zeros or you can have a number, right? So you could say, I'm going to collect 3% or $5,000 number greater. Okay, so if you're looking at maybe a lower priced home, right, you're going to collect 3%, but if the 3% is only $3,000, you're going to collect $5,000. Okay, Andy, question.
Yeah, hey, Jackie, so the percentage you put in there is what you're gonna receive, has nothing to do with another agent or broker that you're dealing with. It's just totally yours, correct?
Yes.
Okay, what happens if it turns into a dual agency?
It doesn't change anything. It's still your fee because the listing contract, I mean, some of that will depend on how their listing contract is written. But for the most part, what we're seeing is that most people are writing them separate. So the listing agent is charging a listing fee, and then you're writing what you want on the purchase agreement. So if you have 3% in here, then on the purchase agreement, you're going to write 3%.
Okay, so you can get a total of 6 out of that, but you're not sacrificing 3. Got it.
No, it would be just the 3. Yep,
Just
it
the
would just be the 3. Yep, and that'll make sense when I move forward here. So just 2 seconds, and I think it'll make more sense.
Okay, cool.
Andy, you had a question.
Yep, I was just gonna say, when you were talking about that verbiage, because I think you and I have talked about this before too, that, you know, some buyers aren't comfortable with just trusting you to say, well, I'm gonna put 3% in here, but I mean, if they only pay out 2%, I'll be fine with that too. Take my word, trust me.
Yeah.
Could there be some kind of clause that Paul puts together for down there and just has a blank for the total
Yes,
number or
I was
whatever?
just thinking we should create a clause for that. So yep, I'll get on that.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so moving forward, so again, we're going to spend some significant time on this, and hopefully I don't run out of time. 32. Okay, why do they owe you this fee? When do they owe you this fee? When they agree to purchase a property before the expiration of this contract. Okay, even if the buyer does not use the broker services, or within 180 days after the expiration, okay, of any property that you have shown However, you need to give them you have to give them within 72 hours, you have to give them a list of properties that you've shown. So if you go out and show them 10 houses, okay, 4 days before the contract expires, you're gonna wanna give them, okay, if they're not gonna renew with you, you're gonna wanna give them a written list of what you've shown them and they become protected properties.
Do you guys do this just, hey, we went out, I showed you these homes, I'm gonna send you a list of them?
I
just so
don't,
that
but
it-
you'll see in
in
the
advance?
one-time showing contract, there is a document that you can use for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically, I
Just
take mine all
wait.
the way through.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you wait till this happens and then you send it. over.
Yeah, I mean, typically, for me personally, typically, they're not gonna go by without me
Mhm.
in where I'm at. But when I started and I did a lot of internet leads, right, that might be different. So a lot of it is who your clientele is. Okay, now, here is the verbiage, okay, 38 through 43. The broker, which is us, right? So you as an agent of the brokerage, okay? So you as an agent are authorized to negotiate and receive compensation paid by the seller or the agent representing the seller. Okay? Any compensation that you're receiving from the other side, whether it be the seller or the listing agent, shall reduce what they owe you that you put in line 30. And furthermore, everyone is going to know who owes who what, because it is state law that you fill out the disclosure statement, compensation disclosure to the buyer prior to writing your PA. Okay, it can be done at the same time as the PA, but it needs to be the first document that they sign. Okay. On that form, it says from seller, from listing agent, from buyer. And you can either fill in a percent or a dollar amount. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna write a purchase agreement on 123 Main Street, and my buyer contract says 3% right here. Okay, so in line 406 of the purchase agreement, I am going to ask that the seller pay me 3%. Okay, so if my line 30 is 3%, and in line 406 of the purchase agreement, I ask the seller to pay 3%, what is my buyer's obligation? 0. If my fee in 30 is 3%, and I write on my purchase agreement 3%, and the seller counters and says, nope, I'm only going to pay you 2%. Contractually, what is my buyer's obligation? 1%. What are my choices at that point? Yep, so Olivia says you can either lower and be fine with the 2%, or you can make them pay any or all of that remaining 1%. Okay, now, where this does get a little muddy is if you run across an agent who is still doing what we call broker to broker. Okay, which means the listing agent has secured a listing contract in, say, 6%. And they're going to pay out 3%. Okay, then that would not go on the purchase agreement. And you would still get it, but you would get it from the listing agent, not from the seller. And there's a different form for that.
Very confused.
We are not seeing that. So you're gonna typically write it on the purchase agreement, because we're not typically anymore seeing broker to broker compensation. That was the olden day way, right? The olden day way of, I'm gonna write my listing contract for 6% and I'm gonna share out 3%. That's what we call broker to broker, and we're not seeing that frequently anymore. So typically you're going to be writing what your fee is on the purchase agreement in line 406. Okay, don't get into the weeds of broker to broker. Okay, if that happens to you and they say, oh no, we gotta take it off the purchase agreement, you can just call me and I'll walk you through it. But I don't even want to talk that way because we're not seeing it. So we're really seeing it on the PA 9 out of 10 times. All right. Okay, questions on compensation? Maria,
I think it's clear.
okay.
If you would have the broker, is there a separate form or is it just written in?
No, it's a separate farm.
It's a-
Yeah, so we're
okay.
not even gonna go down that route because it's different. Dave,
So if we change our commission to say we're going to take 2 versus 3. do we have to
Yes, this is
redo
a
or
great
amend our
question.
buyer contract?
okay, so Dave's question was, if we are fine with 2%, even though our contract says 3, do we need to amend? The answer is no. No, as long as it's less, okay? On the other hand, let's just say for fun, this never happens, but let's just say for fun that you put in 2% here and it was, seller was offering 3%, then you would need to amend your contract because you cannot collect any more than what is on the contract.
Jackie, can you give a demonstration how you would amend that?
Yes, you would, there's one form and the title is very long because it is an amendment to every contract. So it is the amendment to the listing agreement, buyer representation contract, facilitator agreement. And all you would do on that form is say line 30 on the buyer representation agreement shall be X and put in whatever number. So let's say you have 2% in line 30 and the seller is paying out 3%. On that amendment, you would just say line 30 shall be 3. Okay, so one more time through this, okay, is we don't charge a retainer fee. My fee, okay, my fee is 3%. Okay, and that's going to be due to me if you purchase a property or decide to purchase a property 180 days after our contract expires that I've shown you. Now, I am going to negotiate that to try and get the seller to pay any or all of that fee on your behalf. Anything I collect from the seller or from the listing agent will reduce your obligation, and you're going to know exactly what your obligation is prior to us writing a purchase agreement. That's how I explain it. Okay, my fee is this. Okay, I'm going to negotiate to try and get that fee paid for by the seller or the listing agent. Okay, anything I can negotiate will reduce what you owe me. And you're going to know that prior to us writing a purchase agreement. Now, we don't always know that prior to writing the purchase agreement, right? Because now that we're putting our compensation on the PA, okay, you can sure ask for 3%. Okay, and that's how you're going to fill out the compensation disclosure, but they could counter. Okay, but then you're going over the counter offer and your buyer is signing that. So again, they will know before agreeing to anything how much they owe, if anything. And that is the big deal. The lawsuit for the buyer was, I didn't know, number one, okay, I didn't know how my agent was getting paid. And quite honestly, I didn't know that it was really my obligation. That was the crux of the lawsuit. Okay, so now they know your fee is this. It is their obligation to pay. Okay. However, you're going to negotiate on their behalf. Anything you collect from the sell side is going to reduce what they owe, and they will know upfront what that is. Okay. All right. Enough with compensation. This just says broker may not receive compensation for any source, okay? Which includes your broker admin fee, which is why we add that at the end, because you are collecting compensation as that broker admin fee. Okay, now, here's the deal. Remember that list you gave them? It really doesn't matter if they sign with another agent. Okay, 47 through 49, buyer understands that buyer does not have to pay broker compensation if the buyer signs another valid purchase agreement, or I'm sorry, another buyer rep agreement. Okay, now, here we are, bold, all caps. Caution. The buyer's actions in locating a property can affect payment of compensation. Okay, here's examples of this. Going through an open house, unaccompanied by your agent. Signing a purchase agreement through another brokerage or for sale by owner. I would also add in there, new construction. Companies like Lennar, LGI. If your buyer goes online and requests any information or signs into anything, they will not pay you. Okay, so when I get to this point, this is a great way for me to add in value. Okay, here's how I explain it. I know that you're going to be looking on websites. I know you're going to be looking on Zillow, and I know you're probably going to stumble across an open house. Okay, I want you to call me. I want to be there for you. So if you're going to go to an open house, let me know, because I would much rather give you a private showing, right? So that I can look out for you. Before you write a purchase agreement, I would have to go anyways. So we might as well go together. Okay. If you're looking at any new construction websites, make sure you don't sign in because you become a client of theirs. And then I don't always get to help you. If you've got questions about a property, okay, and it's tempting to maybe call a listing agent because you don't want to bug me, remember that this listing agent is working for the seller. So anything you have a conversation about they can take back to the seller. Okay, same thing at an open house. Now, if you are going to an open house, please reach out to me first. If I can make it, I will even come with you. But if not, when you go into the open house, you can either give them one of my cards, okay, or let them know that you're under contract with an agent. If you let me know that you're going, I will also let them know that you're my client. And then again, when you walk through, make sure that you're not vocal about what you can and can't do. Everything you can, everything you say can and will be held against you.
Jackie,
Yeah.
and one thing on new construction too is you have to understand how the individual builders work, because LGI does it based on per development.
Oh,
So if your buyers go to this development, and
okay.
you let that agent know, and they send you an agreement stating this buyer can come here.
Yes.
We will compensate you. But if that buyer goes to one of the LGI's other developments,
Really?
that is not included.
No
So
way.
it's a per development contract with LGI
Okay.
for you as an agent to pay.
Okay, good to know, because Lennar is Lennar. So any development within Lennar. Yeah.
I've just heard so many bad things about LGI.
Yes,
as far as how they
agreed.
work with agents that,
Agreed.
I learned that when I was talking to one, and he said, well, I'll send you the agreement for your buyers to come to this development.
Okay.
In this city.
Nice.
I said, but what if they go to the next city and
Yeah.
they like the home? Well, that's a different contract. So I said, well, I'm not going to send them to any one of them until I know I'm covered for everything. He said,
Yeah.
well, I'll send you contracts for all of our developments over the
Within
western
this area.
suburbs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what he did.
Great to know. So if you didn't hear what Dave said, there are builders out there that you have to let know, and some are per builder and some are per development. So Lennar, for example, is any development within Lennar. LGI is within each community. So I really tell people, don't log into anything, right? Don't just come to me, right? And so this is a great place for you to, again, provide value. I want to come with you. I want to give you a private showing. I want to protect your interests, right? The listing agent's working for the seller. So all these things that you're trying to portray that provide value. Okay. All right. 56 through 60 is what kind of property you're looking for. And so you can check more than one. So maybe they're looking for a rental, maybe they're looking for vacant land, and maybe they're looking for residential. Maybe they're looking for farmland. So you can kind of pick whichever ones you want. All right. 61 and 62. This talks about closing costs. Now, stay in your lane. You are a realtor, not a loan officer. But I would tell you that you should really know enough to explain what closing costs are. Okay, so here we go. Closing costs are your lender fees. So that is everything associated with getting a mortgage. That includes credit check, appraisal, underwriting, arrears, all that. Okay, so one bucket, lender fees. Second bucket, title fees. So that is everything that it takes to transfer the property into your buyer's name is title. Assessment search, title work, deed transfer, all of that. The third bucket is going to be to set up their escrow account. Okay. You don't know what an escrow account is. An escrow account is like a tiny little savings account. And it can contain property taxes, homeowners insurance, and mortgage insurance if applicable. And what they do is they collect X amount, which is different for everyone. So I can't even give you a standard. Okay. They collect X amount of homeowners insurance, X amount of taxes, and X amount of MI, and put it into a little savings account for you. Those are part of your closing costs that you'll pay up front. Okay, so this is another great opportunity for you to provide value. Okay, hey, have you talked to a loan officer yet? Right? I would, I know this is so hard to say. I would always assume that everybody else is not doing their job. Okay, so a great question here is, has your loan officer went over what your closing costs will be and how much cash you have to bring to the table? 9 out of 10 times they're going to say no, even though the lender likely has. Okay. But it's a great time to have that discussion so there are no surprises. Again, this is setting expectations. Okay. So has your loan officer, has your lender, okay, explained to you what closing costs are and how much cash you'll have to bring to the table? Now, in some cases, you're going to ask the seller to pay a portion or all of the closing costs. Again, that's part of what you need to know, which is why you're going to have a conversation with the loan officer. All right, closing services, another place to provide value. Okay, so the all capitals just says basically that we have not talked about, okay, expressed opinions regarding the closing documents. Okay, again, stay in your lane. You are a realtor, you are not a title person. However, you can provide the service of arranging for a qualified title person to conduct the closing. Okay, Lisa in our office is amazing. So that's how I explain this here is, hey, do you know a title person, or could I make those arrangements for you so that you don't have to worry about them? Okay, so in all these ways, you just got done talking about compensation, and now you're saying, but here's the deal. Don't go to an open house. I'll give you a private tour. Okay. Don't call the new construction person. I'll be there. I'll help you. Also, I just want to make sure that your lender is doing their job. Have you talked about closing costs? Oh, and by the way, I will also help you arrange for your title services. All of a sudden, this fee doesn't look so bad. Because look at all the service. You're talking about service ahead of time, right? What are you gonna do? I'm gonna do all these things for you. Yes, you may have to pay me, but I'm also gonna do all these things. Okay? Now, the next section, some of these things I go over, but I don't spend a ton of time on them because they are rarely important at this stage or ever. Okay, so number 1, 74 through 81, foreign investment in real estate. This is the FERPTA. It's weird to me, but if the seller is a non-US citizen, that can actually affect the buyer. Okay, so here's what I say. I read the bold. Here's the deal. I've never come across it in my career that the seller is a non-US citizen. But if that happens, we are going to know ahead of time that's on the seller's disclosures, and then we are going to seek legal advice. Okay, don't get in the weeds. Same thing with private inspection and warranty. Okay, I say it's going to be your right to get a home inspection and it's going to be your right to get a home warranty. But until we decide on a property, we're not going to talk about it. Okay, we're going to figure it out once we find the property. Okay, all right, here's that dual agency section. So if you've just done agency, now you're going to say, hey, remember we talked about dual agency in that previous form? Remember how it can kind of be one of those things where both the listing agent and myself are working for both parties and we kind of have to keep things on the level playing field. But remember, if you don't agree to it, then I can't show you anything listed by a brokerage. Well, now is the time that you have to either agree or not agree. Most are going to say they agree. Okay. Because they want to be able to see all the properties out there. Okay. Last things I always say, these are the sue me things, right? Somebody got sued at one point over these things. Okay. 105 through 107, it just says that I might have, and again, the contract is actually with the brokerage. So that means 125 other agents, okay, might be representing a buyer that are going to make an offer on the same property. 108 through 111 says, hey, I maybe worked with the seller. I'm not the listing agent right now. Okay. And it's brokerage. So my brokerage is not the listing brokerage, but we helped them buy the property. So we've had a previous agency relationship with the seller. Okay. Everything is still confidential because confidentiality, the next one, all those fiduciary responsibilities expire at the end of the contract, except for confidentiality. That goes to the grave. Here's that predatory offender information just one more time. This last part here talks about how there's no other written or oral communication. Okay. That's not included in this contract. Okay. Again, it talks about how the contract can be modified or canceled in writing. And then I don't know why, but it needs to mention that the money has to be in US currency. I don't really tell them that because who thinks otherwise? You can't pay in Bitcoin. Electronic signatures, you're just saying, yep, at some point, okay, at some point, I'm going to have you sign something electronically, and it may very well be this contract for some of you, okay? Your electronic signature is a binding signature, okay? So you can't say, oh, I electronically signed, I didn't know what I was signing, or I didn't agree to that. I always laugh at this one because they still have fax in here. So I just say, this just lets me communicate with you. I can call, I can text, I can even fax if you want me to. I have to find a fax machine. Okay. Now, in this other section, this is where you're going to add any of those touchy-feely things, right? Like, hey, I'm good with 2%. That would go in here. Most importantly, you have to put your broker admin fee in here, and we have a clause for that in our office closets. So when you hover over here, you can see it says add clause. Okay. then you're gonna click, once you do open it, I can show you, it's office plazas. And we got a whole bunch in here, but the one that you're looking for is this one, BAC Buyer Rep Doc. You're gonna click here and click OK, and then you can see it added it in here. Oh. Okay, and then you just need to fix the amount. Remember, if you don't put it in here, you can't collect it.
You suggest a number?
Nope, it's totally up to you. So we charge you the fees no matter what. So we charge you the broker admin fee and we charge you the transaction fee no matter what. You can pay any or all, you can charge any or all or anywhere in between. I would say 80% of our agents put the $5.99 in here because I think that's kind of typical about like the industry wide. But we have people that put 1,000 in here. We have people that put $3.99 in here because they're in the outskirts and that's kind of what is typical for their area. But yeah, we had an agent here before that charged $1,000. I don't. I'm at $6.99. I write in $6.99 or wait, $5.99? No, I'm at $5.99. I write in I don't even know. I don't even know. I can't think. But you can always waive it at the end. You just can't collect, you can't add it later. So typically
Jackie,
yeah.
to clarify that, if you put 1,000 there, the residual goes where?
In your pocket.
Okay,
I always
Okay.
add on to that to offset my transaction coordinator fees and listing coordinator fees.
Yep.
Which are
So
worth
some-
their weight in gold, I'm telling you.
Yep, so some people will add on to to cover their admin. I don't. I don't, but yeah, so basically, let me give you this example. If they buy a house for $450,000, your fees are gonna be $5.99 plus $500. So we will be charging you $1,099. Whatever you collect in here offsets that $1,099. And then if you use listing coordination and transaction coordination, it can go towards that as well. So.
Ultimately, law negate with the closing and you're only gonna get one fee at the end.
Yes.
One.
Yep.
Check.
Yep. Okay, well, we only have 7 minutes left, so I better hurry. Wire fraud, I just say don't wire money until I tell you to. Okay. All right. Now, this buyer rep showing contract is literally snippets from the big buyer contract that we just went over, with the exception of this top piece here. So again, this is the one that you're going to use if you have people that are like, I don't want to write a contract with you. Okay. Alternatives to that are do the big ones that we just went over. Okay. And make it for a day, make it for a week, make it for whatever, or you can use this. Okay. So this one-time showing agreement, okay, again, gives the broker, which is us, right, gives you by proxy, right to locate, set up a showing, and show the property as listed on Exhibit A, which I'm going to show you at the end. Okay, it starts on the date listed on Exhibit A and either terminates upon execution of the bid contract or 6 months from the date the property is shown. Again, contract can be canceled. And then here is the same, look at, you can see broker obligation, buyer obligation. Here's compensation. It all looks the same except for this because this was on the old one. Now the new contract just says shall, but it's the same verbiage. It's just shall not is taken out. Cannot receive compensation for more. Caution open houses. Okay. Here is agency. Okay, so this is the buyer section of agency. I'm sorry, this is the dual agency section of dual agent of the agency. Check yes or no. So this is the same exact thing, same exact add the clause. Okay, so the only difference here is this is where you're going to add those properties. So MLS number, property address, date shown, and then buyer initial if there's 2, and then you're going to initial here. You could use this to keep track of your protective list also, if you want to. They wouldn't have to sign, but you would at least have the date shown and everything. I would just go back in showing time, but this would be another way that you could keep track of that. Any questions on the one-time showing contract? And we call it a one-time, but it's not. It's just, you know, you're not going to use this forever because you're not going to want to fill in 500 properties here. But if they want to get to know you, or you want to make sure that you guys can work together, then this is the form that you'd want to use. All right, last is the broker disclosure. So again, this is going to be signed both on the listing and the buy side, but we're going to go over it as the buyer's agent right now. And so this is a ROGC form, not a state form. Okay, it's our brokerage disclosure. This first one here talks about the seller's disclosures. So when we're coming at it from a perspective of a buyer, the biggest thing that you want to tell them is that right here, material facts pertaining to the property of which the seller is aware that could affect, right, adversely or significantly affect their use or enjoyment of the property. It must be made in good faith by the seller based on the seller's knowledge at the time of disclosure. So here's the deal. It is for when the seller lived there or what they have knowledge of. Okay. It is not provided by us. Okay. It is filled out to the best of the seller's knowledge. Okay. Again, I don't get stuck in the weeds on home inspections. Okay. They get to have a home inspection. It is their right. We recommend they have a home inspection. We will provide you with recommendations, but ultimately it is their decision. The inspector should be qualified. Sellers might have a pre-listing inspection. Okay, buyers and sellers get to decide whether or not they're qualified as inspectors or not. And we are not held responsible. Okay, biggest thing here is, again, hey, once we find the property and we're going to write a purchase agreement, we're going to talk about home inspections. But what you need to know right now is, number one, you have the right to have a home inspection, and we're going to decide that once we write the future purchase agreement.
Where do you view if the sellers had a pre-listing?
It would be either at the property or on the MLS.
Okay.
Yep. Multiple offers from the buyer perspective. Okay. Is that it is the seller's choice to disclose or not disclose information on the existence of multiple offers. Okay. So I say, hey, it is up to it's up to the seller whether or not I know about multiple offers or not. So I always ask. Okay. But if we lose out to another offer, it's because the seller decided they weren't going to disclose that, because I'm always going to ask. Okay. Here is again where you put your broker admin. Yes, it's duplicated. Don't freak. You're going to do that a lot. Okay. If you want kind of what this broker admin fee, compliance fee covers, okay, it covers making sure that all the forms are legal and up to date. Your file goes through compliance to make sure that you've signed everything properly. And we hold onto those documents for the required 7 years. So if you ever want to view those documents or need them for any reason, you only have to give me a call. So that's what this covers. Home warranty, similarly to home inspection, okay, is that the property may have a home warranty on it already, but as a buyer, you will also have the right to decide whether or not you want a home warranty and whether or not you want to pay for that, or the seller, or you want to ask the seller to pay for that. And we're going to talk about that when we write the offer.
You can also have home warranties after.
Very
the
short
closing?
time after closing, but typically you're going to do it before.
What is the limit? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay.
Maybe 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had my parents purchased in Arizona last year, and we had a whole bunch of things that had come up that were not disclosed. And so the realtor then, probably within that 30 days, if it was, she bought them a home warranty after the fact.
Yeah, it's hard because if they ever found out that it was like that beforehand, then they wouldn't cover
Probably
anything.
not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Capital gains and 1031s, again, on the buy side, unless they're doing a 1031, we don't talk about this. Here's just kind of your caveats, right? I'm a realtor, okay? That is where I am an expert in. I know some things about other areas like lending and title and taxes and inspections and things like that, but I am no expert in any of those fields. I am only a licensed real estate agent. I will likely give you some referrals throughout our transaction, whether it be a home inspector or a painter or a plumber or something like that. I'm referring them to you because my clients have always had good luck, or agents in my office have used them. And so I can't guarantee that they're going to do a great job. If they don't do a great job, I for sure want to know about it. But I can't guarantee they're going to do excellent for you. And then, as always, you have the right to consult an attorney or an accountant if you choose. Questions about the broker disclosure? All right. So if you're in the mentor-mentee program, you have access to this template, number one, so that you can see how things are filled out. You also have access to me explaining, maybe not yet, I think I have to re-record that one, but you'll have access to me explaining how I explain it to a buyer so that you can listen. But really, I don't want you to like spit out my words. I want you to create your own words. Okay. And so if you're in the mentor-mentee program, that is one of your assignments, is you should be preparing these documents for me and sending them into my inbox so that I can review them and see if they were filled out correctly. And then to take it a step further, you can book your one-on-ones with me and we can role play as me as the buyer, and you can be explaining the forms to me. So if you're in the mentor-mentee program, that is your assignments, is to create a transaction like this, fill out the forms and send them to my inbox, which this is how you do that. You select the ones that you want. So I would like you to fill out all of them. Not that there's much to fill out in this one. You could probably actually skip that one. And you're going to put it in the basket, and then you're going to go ahead and either download it as a PDF or you're going to email it to me. Okay. So you're going to create the transaction, fill it out, send it to my inbox so that I can review it. And then practice. And if you want to role play with me, you can book a one-on-one to do so. And anybody can do that, but that's your assignments as a mentor-mentee program person. For those of you that are online for that. All right. We're going to do this again tonight. If you want to re-listen or catch up or anything like that, we're going to do it again tonight from 6:30 to 8. And then I will record, like I said, the templates are available in your Google Drive for mentor-mentee. I just have to record how I present it. I think I did the listing side, but not the buy side yet. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, thanks for hanging out an extra 4 minutes with me. Have a great afternoon, and maybe we'll see you guys at the parade.
Thanks, Jackie.
Yep,
Thanks,
have a good one.
Jackie.
What's the best way to view your calendar and schedule one-on-one?
We'll